Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to College Football Red Zone, where I'm going to give you that holistic and 50,000 feet perspective on all 138 FBS programs entering the 2026 season. I'm going to give you my thoughts about each team's roster. I'm going to give you even my spring record prediction as well. So, hope you guys are all excited for that and so much more. And if you are, make sure you go ahead and do a couple of things for me real fast. Hit that like button and then also hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into what I consider the second best team in the CUSA entering this season, and it is the Liberty Flames. And I will say this about Liberty: I am certainly not as high in them as I have been the last couple of years. But I look at it this way. I think that this has been one of the better programs in this conference over the years. And Jamie Chadwell does have a track record of winning, even dating back before he took this Liberty job. He was the previous head coach at Coastal Carolina and led the Chanticleers to the 2020 Sun Belt title and really led Coastal Carolina to its highest moments as an FBS program thus far in its FBS existence. And then he comes over here and he does lead them to that CUSA title a few years ago. But then ever since they won that title in 2023 and get awarded an opportunity to compete in a New Year's Six Bowl, it's been a little bit downhill ever since, right? For the last few years, they still did pretty good in like pretty decent in 2024, but obviously it wasn't the same. And then last year they failed to make it to a bowl game last year. So, it's kind of a team that's on a little bit of a downhill decline. And I'm sure that Jamie Chadwell, who's figured out how to win in multiple places before, is going to figure it out, but it is a little bit of a cause of concern. But uh, I mean, I just look at what Jamie Chadwell's track record is. I've looked at this program holistically compared to the other programs in this conference, and yeah, I've seen them disappoint me in the last couple of years. But at the same time, I'm ready to be hurt again. Is what I'm trying to say at the end of the day, because particularly on the defensive side of the ball, I think defensively this should be a much improved defensive unit. They do return Darrell Farah, who played at the linebacker position for the Flames last year, was a really good linebacker and was a bright spot in what was a difficult year for this Liberty football team in 2025. Ended up getting third team All CUSA honors, which is really the best that they got out of the key returnees. Was the only All CUSA player returning from his Liberty roster. But then they made sure that when they went into the transfer portal, they went and got difference makers in terms of guys that are going to make an immediate impact and should be in this starting lineup for Liberty going into this fall. Whether it's they added, for example, a DIC Hopkins, who was a really solid safety for the Georgia State Panthers, was a bright spot in what was a even more difficult season for the Panthers last year. So I think he has potential breakout potential to where he goes from being a solid safety for Georgia State to being a good to a really good safety to basically being a part of a much better program than what he had to work with at Georgia State. But then it's not just DIC Hopkins that they added in the transfer portal. I also really like the ads of Lorenzo Payne, who is a really nice edge rusher from West Florida, now part of the FCS ranks. He had 7.5 sacks last year. And so Lorenzo Payne can come in and help be a disruptor for this Liberty football team in 2026. Plus, on the back end as well, they added Elijah McKenzie, not from a Division One program previously from Bowie State, but he had multiple forced fumbles last year. So as someone that does have a really good nose and is a very instinctive corner that I think is going to translate well, even though he's playing a higher level of football than maybe what he was used to at Bowie State. So between the three people that they added in the transfer portal, plus what they bring back in Daryl Farah at the linebacker position, this defensive unit should be an improved defensive unit. That's going to help them win some games while they're trying to figure out what that offensive identity is going to look like early on in the year, right? Because they do lose Evan Dickens, and Evans Dickens again was another bright spot in what was a tough year for the Flames. Had 1,400 yards, had 17 touchdowns. He was a very key part of his offense. But they did add Kanye Udo from Arizona State in a couple of years. He had some incredible runs at Army, went to Arizona State, didn't necessarily work out for him at Arizona State, but I mean, this is a guy that could get back to what he was before he transferred into Arizona State. Definitely has that breakout potential as well. So, really holistically, the biggest question that I have more than anything is what are they going to look like on the perimeter offensively? They lost Dante Lee to Texas Tech in the transfer portal, and he had a solid year, 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. But I think the talent is there to be even better because I know that there was some inconsistencies in the passing game last year. And so it just really leads into me asking myself, who is going to step up on the perimeter in that wide receiver room? Because they didn't add anybody of note in terms of anyone that had production at their previous stop, right? So that's really the $1 million question for me is what that wide receiver room is going to look like. But because I think this defense is going to be a much improved unit in compared to last year, I think it sets up the Liberty Flames to have a bounce back year. And it's not just a roster that has me feeling optimistic, or at least a cautious optimism going into this year. I think the schedule itself is going to set up Liberty even better. So let's take a look at the schedule real fast. And really, outside of the James Madison game, which they do open the season up against James Madison, I think that really any of these games on this list, I think they can win just about any game that you see here on this list, right? There is a world where I think they can be 11-1. And honestly, because I believe that not only is this the easiest schedule in the CUSA, I think this is the easiest schedule in all of major college football. So honestly, there really isn't much of an excuse here to not at least get back to where you were a couple of years ago, or even not necessarily a 2023 level year where you end up running the table and win the conference, but maybe a little bit closer, much closer to what you did in a few years ago when Chadwell did take this team to a title game, won that title, and went to a New Year's Six Bowl much closer than what we saw last year, where they were a complete disappointment, and some would even say a dumpster fire as well. Because the rest of his schedule looks pretty manageable. I mean, in conference play, they miss out on playing Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State could be a contender for the CUSA as well, so that's nice from a scheduling perspective as well. The road games outside of the Kennesaw State game is going to be pretty manageable as well. You know, Delaware. I worry about Delaware's offensive line going into this year. I don't think it'll be a great matchup compared to going up against Liberty. You do also have New Mexico State that's trying to figure itself out, and Missouri State. Well, yes, you also have to play them on the road, but in the case specifically for Missouri State, they're still trying to pick up the pieces after Ryan Beard left for Coastal Carolina. And so the home games are also looking pretty good as well. Sam Houston, FIU, Mid Tennessee, definitely feel like those are safe wins. And the Western Kentucky game, even. That's me, probably the best team in the CUSA. You get them at home, and so that's going to give you a fighting chance to beat those guys. And if you're able to get those scales tipped in your favor and you win that Western Kentucky game, then you could be set up really nicely to host a conference championship on your home campus. Now, that being said, because I don't have as much faith as what I did, particularly last year, there still is a world where if everything falls apart, they could miss out on a bowl game yet again. And then we have to ask ourselves, is Jamie Chadwell the right guy for this job long term? If that worst case scenario happens. But realistically, I think it's much closer to what we saw in 2023 than what we saw last year. I think that this is a team that is going to end up winning double digit games and they're going to win on the back of their defense. Might take a little bit for that offense to get going, but the good news is outside the James Madison game, there's a couple of games there early in the year that will allow the offense to find itself, and the defense should help you take care of business. You'll win games on that defense at least a couple of times before you get into conference play, right? So, a very good outlook on Liberty. I think that this is a team that Could very well play for the CUSA title game. Now, whether they win it or not, that could be a different conversation, but I am curious to hear your thoughts, though. I did have Liberty ultimately as the 99th best team in college football, so they barely snuck into my top 100. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Am I too high on this Liberty squad or am I too low? Definitely let me know down in the comments section down below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown of the Liberty Flames, I need you to do a couple of favors for me real fast. Go ahead and hit that like button and then also hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel. And with that being said, this is Jake from College Football Red Zone signing off. Hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.